Today we're going to discuss the final rotator cuff, or the last S in the sits muscles, subscapularis. Subscapularis is one muscle we cannot see beneath our skin very easily at all because it sits on the anterior of the scapula against the rib cage. The subscapularis originates in the subscapular fossa and inserts on the humerus. In addition to stabilizing the shoulder joint, the subscapularis internally or medially rotates the humerus. When we bring our hands behind our bodies into reverse prayer, we are engaging into medial rotation with our shoulder joints. As we have discussed, it's always a good idea to have alternative poses or modifications ready. Some modification ideas for reverse prayer are to use a strap between the hands. And sometimes a nice way to begin preparing for reverse prayer is to simply stand in mountain pose and rotate the arms medially. And for some people, this might be enough. And for others, that may be too simple. I always encourage my students to actively pay attention to what their body is telling them and listen. One other thing I wanted to discuss today is a shoulder surgery called a reverse replacement. My dad actually had this surgery a few years ago, and I was kind of confused on exactly how they put his shoulder back together. So since we're talking about the rotator cuff, I just thought I would share a little bit about what I have learned about that surgery, just for general information and understanding. But please do note that if someone has had surgery, they must wait the proper amount of time, which is dictated by their medical team, before they can safely resume their yoga practice. There are many different types of rotator cuff surgery. Sometimes tendons become disconnected from the bone, for example. Sometimes there's a tear in one of the muscles, and sometimes it's more serious, as was in the case of my dad's. In the normal shoulder, as we know, the socket part of the ball and socket joint is made up from part of the scapula, and the ball is the head of the arm bone or the humerus. So when someone has a reverse replacement, these swap. So the round ball part, they actually put onto the shoulder blade side, and the other side on the humerus, the best way I can describe it is kind of an indented plate where the head of the humerus was. So it ends up reversed. That's why it's called a reverse replacement, because the ball is on the opposite side of a typical anatomical shoulder. Again, I don't know the intricate details. I am not a surgeon, but I thought it was worth mentioning since we've been talking about the rotator cuff.